Today, I'll start with the sixth precept, which reads, "Do not maintain anger or hatred. Learn to penetrate and transform them when they are still seeds in your consciousness. As soon as they arise, turn your attention to your breath in order to see and understand the nature of your anger and hatred, and the nature of the persons who have caused your anger and hatred." And while typing this precept, it came to me that when we maintain our anger and hatred, we are keeping ourselves victimized. We have the spiritual power to release ourselves from this painful position. And when we do not realize this power, the tendency is to turn toward retaliation, finding ways to diminish and victimize those that we hate or are angry with. The wheel of this victim turning towards tyrant is the energy that drives war and so much of the suffering that we experience both in our own minds and in the world. So when anger and hatred arise, we need to prepare the ground for understanding. If we stop thinking, speaking, and acting from inside of this victim-tyrant paradigm, the space for us to see and understand opens up. The moment we feel irritation arising, we need to consciously breathe in and out, putting the whole of our mind into our breathing, and choosing not to heed this pull that can be so strong to justify and feed our anger. And by holding full intention to transform it into empowered insight and understanding. Then with the energy of mindfulness, we can look deeply and see how the person who is making us angry may have helped us in the past, or how that person has suffered, or how we ourselves have been unskillful, or we can even realize how our anger is drawing us into the same behavior that is upsetting us. It may take us a few moments to realize this, or it can take several days. And until we come to some understanding, it is best if we can refrain from saying anything to the person toward whom we are feeling angry. And I wanted to share some from my experience about this choosing to refrain from acting out our anger and practicing mindfulness until understanding arises. I find it a very potent and advanced practice. When the issues which trigger anger and hatred are enmeshed in cultural patterns and taboo energies, which have run through many generations or even through some of our own lifetimes, I find that they can actually require us to return to focused diligence over and over for years. And so I just wanted to share that I had a strong marriage and loving relationship with my husband when anger and hatred entered through a sense of being deeply betrayed by him. And fortunately for our family, at that karmic moment when actions cracked our marriage open, I had a strong commitment to witnessing my emotions and not acting on them. And though the process was really messy and it's taken years, I did have some skill at holding this position, and many insights and understanding was received. And yet after 30 some years, certain thoughts can still trigger this anger, and I have to return to breathing, observing, and regaining a sense of peace. And I just recently had the experience. I hit some anger while grieving the death of a friend's daughter. And I was surprised to watch my mind move out of the present moment of what I was feeling and right back into the most painful time with my husband. And the old storyline returned me to feeling victimized and once again tried to justify feeling angry. And I experienced this transfer of anger back to the past as a rather rude intrusion on my current grieving. But once I was able to breathe into the suffering, which accompanies remembering those past events, I was given the opportunity to find fuller forgiveness for my husband. And this was right in the midst of the loss of my friend's daughter. And I just have to say, phew, catching how the mind can usurp the present moment and then finding what healing it may be leading to takes a strong practice of mindfulness. And with this experience really fresh in my awareness, I was drawn into a deeper consideration of healing with Thich Nhat Hanh's analogy about the lemon tree. He points out that we do not tend to blame a tree for not growing well. Instead, we seek to understand what it needs and provide it. He says, but we do blame human beings when they are not growing well. Because our brothers, sisters, lovers, and children are humans, we think they should behave in certain ways. But human beings are not very different from lemon trees, he says. If we take good care of them, they will grow properly. Blaming never helps. Only love and understanding can help people change. And then Thich Nhat Hanh goes on to say that if he had been born into the social conditions of a sea pirate and raised as a sea pirate, he would have been a sea pirate now. A variety of interdependent causes has created the existence of a sea pirate. The responsibility is not solely his or his family's, it is also society's. Each of us shares responsibility for the presence of pirates. So coming to see and understand how life dynamics co-arise is our work of mindfulness. And lending insight into how life dynamics co-arise is a major contribution that we can make to our collective healing. Meditating on dependent origination and looking with compassionate eyes helps us see our duty and our responsibility to suffering beings. This work actually lifts us out of the boundaries which bind us into separate self-consciousness. Thich Nhat Hanh ends the sixth precept with expanding upon a quote from the Lotus Sutra, which says, "Look at other beings with the eyes of compassion." He goes on to say, the eyes of compassion are also the eyes of understanding. Compassion is the sweet water that springs forth from the source of understanding. To practice looking deeply is the basic medicine for anger and hatred. And I just wanted to add that we do not need to do this work alone on our cushions, although that can be a wonderful place to work much of it out. We can also witness each other's struggles with being caught inside of anger and hatred. And I found it an immense healing to have friends with whom I can admit that I'm caught in, the toxicity of one of the poisons and just admit it, that I'm struggling with it. And so I just wanted to say that liberation is not about achieving a pious and perfect state of being. It is a continual process of recognizing where we are caught and providing the awareness which liberates us. And the 7th precept: do not lose yourself in dispersion and in your surroundings or in your thoughts and emotions. Practice mindful breathing to come back to what is happening in the present moment. Be in touch with what is wondrous, refreshing, and healing both inside and around you. Plant seeds of joy, peace, and understanding in yourself in order to facilitate the work of transformation in the depths of your consciousness. So whether we live at a meditation center or with our family or work in an office or study at a university, the practice of mindfulness is crucial to being fully present in the moment. Not to have one part of us washing the dishes while the other part is thinking about when it's going to be over with. Mindfulness can be practiced throughout the day: walking, sitting, standing, lying down, resting are all occasions for practice. Conscious breathing is the vehicle that brings us back to the present moment and keeps us here. Living in awareness of our body, our feelings, our mind, and in awareness of the objects of our mind. And without mindfulness, we miss the wonderful flowers, the glorious moon, our children, our spouse, and our friends. We miss who's appreciating us. All of these are infinitely precious and rare parts of our interbeing. Mindfulness makes life real, deep, and worth living. It helps us get in touch with refreshing and healing elements within and around us. Mindfulness allows us to be where true life can be encountered. When we practice in this way, we are planting and watering the seeds of joy, peace, and understanding. We are nourishing the seeds that have the power to transform pain and afflictions. Often affliction and pain can be transformed just because of the presence of the positive seeds that we plant and water in our daily life by the practice of mindful living. If we are not joyful in our practice will become weak. If our practice does not transform our lives and bring us great joy, if we are not able to bring joy to others and to understand them, we are not practicing correctly. Thich Nhat Hanh ends his discourse on the 7th precept by saying, "The wonders of the universe are revealed to us in the meditation of interdependence." We can see that one thing exists because everything else exists. The 8th precept: harmony and community. Do not utter words that can create discord and cause the community to break. Make every effort to reconcile and resolve all conflicts, however small. He speaks to how community life is possible only with concord. And the Buddha prescribed 6 concords, 6 principles of community life. And I'll just read those. Living together in one place, sharing material resources, observing the same precepts, practicing together and sharing the understanding of the Dharma, reconciling different viewpoints, and practicing kind speech to avoid quarrels. And we do live together in one world. And though we don't always share our resources that we feel are our own, we are, in this world context, sharing our resources together. He says, when there is good communication regarding ideas and interests, quarrels are not likely to occur. Loving speech is born from understanding and patience. Only understanding and love, not blame, can bring about change. And at the heart of this precept is reconciliation, which is quite an art. Reconciliation requires us to understand both sides of a conflict. Not only do both sides bear partial responsibility, but even those who are not in the conflict bear some responsibility. If we have been living in mindfulness, we could have seen the earliest phases of conflict beginning to arise, and we could have helped avoid it. To reconcile is not to judge by standing outside of the conflict. It is to take some responsibility for the existence of the conflict and to make every effort to understand the suffering of both sides. Then we can help communicate to each side the suffering experienced by the other and offer some resolution based on an ideal common to both sides. The purpose of reconciliation is not to save face or for self-interest, but to realize compassionate understanding. To help reconcile, we ourselves must embody understanding and compassion. And the success of our effort will depend on the degree of our understanding and compassion, not only for the two sides, but to ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh repeats that every true community is a community of concord. Before a Buddhist community begins an activity like reciting the precepts or making a decision or performing the ceremony of precept transmission, the chairperson always begins by asking, "Has the community gathered?" And the community responds, "Yes, the community has gathered." And then the chairperson asks, "Is there harmony in the community?" And the community then answers, "Yes, there is harmony in the community." And if this is not the answer, then the meeting cannot proceed. And this practice is called Karman procedure and was established during the time of the Buddha. And it has been practiced by communities of monks and nuns throughout the last 25 centuries.